I think it's important to look back at our history with a female perspective, to remember that it wasn't that long ago how few rights we had. In 1974, women were not able to purchase a house without a man co-signing. That is really hard for like my daughter to understand. That when my mom was coming up, she was born in 1954, and she said when she was growing up that women were secretaries, teachers, or nurses. There weren't a lot of opportunities for them. And that's something that my daughter doesn't even really, it doesn't sink into her. She thinks, well, I could be an astronaut, I could be a scientist. I think it's important to look back to see how far we've come, but also to see how close that was to where we are now. That's not that long ago. And I think it helps us measure where we need to go and how far we've come, but there is still a lot of work, and to understand how precious it is that we have these rights, that how important it is, and how not that far away it was that we didn't have these.
It is so important because a lot of women's history is not like prevalent, like it's not known.
Yeah.
I went, the library had a speaker on vanguards and how the Bennett Bells really helped with women's suffrage. I mean, so those stories that are not known, seeking them out and telling them, telling little girls. I mean, it's so cool that the person who was instrumental in the COVID vaccine is from North Carolina, went right to Chapel Hill, African-American female, telling that to the kids so they know people just like them can do great things.
When I look back at history, I see that where women used to be, there was a time when women couldn't own their own property. There was a time when women couldn't vote. And now to see, I'll refer back to what I just said about whenever I looked around our community, whenever I was even applying for this position, I was inspired by, I was looking at a lot of the nonprofit agencies, and I was like, that one's led by a woman, this one's led by a woman. And I was just amazed at how many of the nonprofits now are women-led, and that was inspiring to me. So I just think looking back at, yeah, we couldn't do this, and now, you know, here there are so many in great leadership positions and that I work with every day and that do a great job at it, and they are just inspiring to know. So,
Looking back in history from a female perspective gives us the opportunity to know how strong we are and how resilient we are, that we have to, of course, work harder than our counterparts, but that we can do it, we can overcome. I'm even looking back to when I first started D-Up, and I think about the women who helped me along the way that gave great advice, you know, from Dr. Pamela Palmer, who worked with High Point University, and to see the number of years that she worked at this university, now she has her own agency. And I think about Megan Oglesby, who, you know, a graduate of High Point University, but the major things that she's doing in this city. And I remember asking her one day is, you know, how do you do all of this? Looking at the blueprint of Condé Nast. And she said that she surrounds herself with people that know. She may not know, but they know. And then lastly, I think about Carvina Foster, who is also a graduate of High Point University. And I look at her and all of the spaces that she's in, and she does it with so much grace. And I like to take that on and just having conversations like, how do you do it? You know, how do you meet so many people? And that was one thing that she told me, that relationships are important. Being able to meet people and understand people and read people is so important to what you're doing. So it's very important for us to look back on the legacies of other women for us to build upon.
For young women, I think it's very important to understand from where we've come. from where we come. And, oftentimes our history seems to be shaped from the male point of view. They want to forget about the work that women have done to help shape society. So it's absolutely necessary so they can understand the work they've done. And so this also can be a form of inspiration for them as they start their leadership roles.
Well, all females today in the workforce are here today because of the women before us. And those women that were here before us, depending on how far you want to look back, but the women who came before us really did pave the way for us all to be here today. The medical director at the clinic used to have a picture of his med school class, and he graduated from med school, 50 plus years ago, and there was one female in his class. And you think about that single female in a whole group of men and how difficult it had to be for her to be part of that group. Not because anyone intentionally made it hard for her, but because that was the work, that was the way it was. See? And I think that when we look back at history and we look back at the roles of women in the workplace, we see a lot of women who did not have the opportunity to be in leadership roles because that's not where business was. But all of those women who worked really, really hard, who worked within the limitations that were placed upon them at the time, who continued to fight to prove their value and their worth, made it possible for all of us in the workplace today to be leaders and to lead workforces that include males and females and to have multiple opportunities because they made it possible.